The desperate arrangement. Rohan Malhotra stared at the hospital ceiling, counting the water stains while the doctor's words echoed in his mind. 3 months, maybe less. His grandmother, Leela, the woman who had raised him since he was 8, was dying of congestive heart failure. The only family he had left would soon be gone. "Beta, before I go, I just want to see you settled," grandmother Leela had whispered earlier that day, her frail hand squeezing his with surprising strength. "To know you won't be alone." Rohan knew what she meant. For years, she had hoped to see him married, to attend his wedding, to know he had found someone to share his life with. But at 32, Rohan had built walls around himself as meticulously as the buildings he designed. His architecture firm consumed every waking hour, leaving no room for romance. The autumn rain pelted against the window as Rohan left the hospital, his mind racing. He couldn't bear the thought of disappointing his grandmother in her final months. The idea came to him suddenly, absurd yet somehow perfect in its simplicity: a temporary bride. Priya Sharma arranged white lilies in a crystal vase, humming softly as the bell above her flower shop door chimed. She looked up to see a tall man, with rain-soaked hair and tired eyes. She recognized him vaguely, the architect whose office was down the street, who sometimes ordered arrangements for clients but never smiled. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I need a wife," Rohan blurted out, then winced. "I mean, that came out wrong." Priya's eyebrows shot up. "I sell flowers, not whatever you're looking for." "My grandmother is dying," he said, the words tumbling out. "Her last wish is to see me married. I don't have time to date, but I thought maybe an arrangement, just for a month." Priya stared at him, stunned. "You want me to pretend to be your wife? I'll pay you of course," Rohan said quickly. "And it would just be for appearances. We'd have separate rooms. You'd just need to visit the hospital with me, attend a few family gatherings." "You're serious?" Priya asked, studying his face. Rohan nodded, desperation evident in his eyes. "I know it's strange, but I can't bear for her to worry about me being alone when she's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Priya thought of her own grandmother who had passed away 2 years ago, how she would have done anything to grant her final wishes. Still, this was madness. "Why me? You barely know me. You're kind to everyone who comes in here. My grandmother would like you," he said simply. "And you mentioned once that you live alone above the shop. I thought maybe you could use the money." Priya bristled at that. True, the flower shop barely kept her afloat and the leak in her apartment ceiling wasn't fixing itself. But still. "1 month," Rohan said. "That's all I'm asking. After that, we go our separate ways." Priya looked around her small shop, at the calendar marked with bill due dates, and thought of the lonely evening ahead. Then she thought of an old woman, clinging to life, wanting to see her grandson happy. "I must be crazy," she murmured, then looked him in the eye. 1 month, not a day more. Rohan's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." Neither of them realized that the contract they were drafting, with its clear end date and professional boundaries, would soon be worth less than the paper it was written on. Reluctant beginnings. The morning Priya moved into Rohan's apartment was awkward at best. His modern penthouse, with its minimalist design and panoramic views of the city, felt cold and impersonal. All chrome, glass, and empty spaces. Much like the man himself, she thought. "Your room is through here," Rohan said, wheeling her suitcase down a hallway. "Bathroom is attached. I've cleared some closet space." Priya followed him, noting the absence of personal photographs or mementos. The guest room was tastefully decorated but had clearly never been used. "Thank you," she said, accepting the key he handed her. "So, how exactly does this work?" Rohan produced a folder. "I've prepared some notes about my life, my family, things you should know if we've been dating for a year and engaged for 3 months, which is our story." Priya flipped through the meticulously organized pages. "You've thought of everything. I'm an architect. Details matter." He checked his watch. "We're visiting my grandmother this afternoon. She's being moved from the hospital to hospice care. Priya nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of what she'd agreed to. She was about to meet a dying woman and lie to her face. Rohan, I need to ask, are you sure this is right? Lying to your grandmother? A shadow crossed his face. It's not ideal, but she's suffering enough without worrying about me. This will bring her peace. He hesitated. We should practice. Practice what? Being together. We can't look like strangers. He awkwardly reached for her hand and Priya almost laughed at how stiff he was. Relax your fingers, she instructed, and maybe don't look like you're in physical pain when you touch me. A ghost of a smile appeared on his face. Sorry, it's been a while. The hospice center was warm and bright with sunlight streaming through large windows. Grandmother Leela's room was filled with flowers, ironically many from Priya's own shop, though she'd never made the connection to Rohan before. Dottie, this is Priya, Rohan said softly, approaching the bed where a tiny woman with silver hair and bright eyes sat propped against pillows. Leela's face lit up. So she exists. I was beginning to think you made her up. She extended frail hands toward Priya. Come, let me see the girl who finally captured my grandson's heart. Priya stepped forward, her rehearsed introduction vanishing from memory as she took the older woman's hands. They were warm and paper-thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong. The florist, Leela said approvingly. No wonder my room always has the most beautiful arrangements. Rohan told me how you met when he ordered flowers for a client. Priya shot Rohan a surprised glance. He'd been a customer, but they'd never really spoken until his bizarre proposal. Yes, she recovered smoothly. He kept coming back for more arrangements. I thought he had a lot of clients, but eventually, I realized he just wanted to see me. Rohan looked uncomfortable, but Leela clapped her hands in delight. That sounds like my shy boy. Always the long route with him. She patted the bed beside her. Sit, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. For the next hour, Priya wove a tapestry of half-truths and complete fabrications, drawing from the folder Rohan had prepared and improvising the rest. To her surprise, Rohan occasionally joined in, adding details she couldn't have known. And then she scolded me for ordering lilies when tulips would clearly be better for the client's taste, he said with more animation than Priya had ever seen from him. He finally listened, Priya added. Only took 3 attempts. Stubborn like his grandfather, Leela said fondly. Then her expression grew serious as she reached for both their hands. Promise me something. Take care of each other when I'm gone. Life is too short for work to be your only love, Rohan. Priya felt a lump in her throat. We will, she promised, feeling Rohan's hand tighten around hers. On the drive home, they were quiet. The weight of their deception hung between them. Your grandmother is lovely, Priya finally said. Yes, Rohan replied, eyes fixed on the road. Thank you for today. You were convincing. So were you, Priya said, surprised. I didn't know you paid that much attention when you came to the shop. Rohan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. 29 more days, he said, almost to himself. And though it was exactly what they'd agreed upon, something about the countdown felt strangely hollow. Unexpected stirrings 2 weeks into their arrangement, something shifted. Priya couldn't pinpoint exactly when the atmosphere in Rohan's apartment began to change, but the sterile space had somehow become less empty. Her gardening books now occupied a corner of the living room shelf. Fresh flowers, leftovers from her shop, brightened the kitchen table. The scent of her cooking lingered in the air. Rohan, too, seemed to be thawing. She'd catch him watching her sometimes with an expression she couldn't quite read. You don't have to make dinner, he said one evening, finding her chopping vegetables. That wasn't part of our agreement, Priya shrugged. I like cooking. Besides, you can't live on takeout and protein shakes. I managed for years, he said, but accepted the spoon she offered, tasting the curry simmering on the stove. His eyes widened. That's incredible. My mother's recipe, she said. Family secret. Is she still No. Car accident when I was in college. My father followed a year later, heart attack. The doctors said grief can do that. Rohan was quiet for a moment. My parents died in a plane crash when I was 8. That's when I came to live with Dottie. Priya nodded, understanding. The shared language of loss. Is that why you work so much, to avoid getting close to people? His shoulders stiffened. I work because I'm good at it. Not everything needs psychoanalysis. Sorry, she murmured, turning back to the stove. After a moment, she felt him step closer. No, I'm sorry. You hit a nerve. He reached past her for plates. Let me set the table. They ate together, and for the first time, really talked. Not about the pretense or his grandmother, but about themselves. Rohan described the buildings he hoped to design someday, sustainable structures that worked with nature instead of against it. Priya shared her dream of expanding her shop to include a community garden. Why haven't you? He asked. Money, she admitted. The shop barely covers rent and supplies. He nodded thoughtfully but said nothing more. The next day at the hospice, Leela seemed stronger, sitting up and even joking with the nurses. Marriage suits you both, she told them, eyes twinkling. Rohan, you're almost smiling these days. Priya's influence, he said, and the warmth in his voice didn't sound rehearsed. Later, when Priya stepped out to find coffee, Leela grasped Rohan's hand. She's perfect for you, Beta. I can see how you look at her. How's that? He asked, suddenly wary. The same way your grandfather looked at me, like you can't believe she's real. She patted his cheek. Don't waste time pretending you're not falling in love. I don't have much left to watch you figure it out. Rohan froze. Dottie, hush, she said. I've lived long enough to know the difference between acting and feeling. Whatever brought you two together, it doesn't matter now. What matters is what's growing. When Priya returned, she found Rohan unusually quiet. On the drive home, he detoured to a small park overlooking the city. Want to walk? He asked abruptly, already getting out of the car. The evening air was cool. The park bathed in golden sunset light. They walked in silence until Rohan stopped at a bench. I designed this park, he said. My first major project. Priya looked around, with new appreciation. The space flowed organically with curved paths and natural groupings of trees. It's beautiful. Peaceful. I come here sometimes to think, he admitted, when the office feels too confining. And what are you thinking about now? She asked gently. He turned to her, really looking at her perhaps for the first time. How strange it is that someone I barely knew 2 weeks ago now feels essential. The word hung between them, fragile and enormous. Priya's heart quickened. Rohan, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I know this is temporary, just business. But as they walked back to the car, their hands brushed, then linked. Neither acknowledged it, but neither pulled away. That night, Priya lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She had come here for the money, yes, but also out of compassion for a dying woman and her grandson. Now, with half their time already gone, she found herself dreading the day when she would pack her bags and leave. The thought of returning to her empty apartment above the shop felt hollow in a way it never had before. Across the hall, Rohan too was awake, wrestling with feelings he had never anticipated and didn't know how to handle. The countdown that had once seemed so straightforward, 29 days, 28, 27, now filled him with a quiet panic. 15 days left, and nothing was going according to plan. When pretending becomes real. The call came at 3:17 a.m., shattering the quiet night. Rohan fumbled for his phone, instantly alert when he heard the hospice nurse's voice. Your grandmother has taken a turn. You should come quickly. Priya was already at his bedroom door, hair disheveled but eyes alert. No words were needed. She grabbed their coats while he found his keys, and within minutes they were racing through empty streets. In the car, Priya reached across the console and took his hand. She's strong, Rohan. His fingers tightened around hers. What if I'm too late? What if— Don't, she said firmly. Just drive. The hospice was eerily quiet when they arrived, the night staff moving with hushed efficiency. Leela's room was dimly lit, the monitors beside her bed emitting soft, irregular beeps. She looked smaller than ever, swallowed by white sheets, her breathing labored. Dottie, Rohan whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. I'm here. Leela's eyes fluttered open, finding first Rohan's face, then Priya's as she stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder. My children, she murmured, her voice barely audible. So good to see you both. The doctor appeared, speaking in low tones about a sudden fluid buildup, increased medications making her comfortable. Rohan nodded mechanically, his face a mask of control that Priya could see fracturing around the edges. I'll get us some tea, she said gently, giving him space to absorb the doctor's words. In the small kitchenette down the hall, Priya's hands shook as she filled 2 paper cups. The past 3 weeks had changed everything. What had begun as a business arrangement had somehow become the most real relationship she'd ever known. And, now watching Rohan face his grandmother's imminent death, pretending felt impossible. When she returned, Rohan was alone with Leela, who had drifted into a fitful sleep. He took the tea with a grateful nod. Doctor says it could be hours or days, he said, his voice raw. They've increased her pain medication. Priya pulled a chair beside his. I'm not going anywhere. Morning came, then afternoon. Leela drifted in and out of consciousness. When awake, she was sometimes lucid, sometimes confused, speaking of people long dead as if they were in the room. Through it all, Rohan and Priya remained, one always at Leela's side while the other handled calls, brought food, or simply provided silent support. During one brief moment of clarity, Leela beckoned Priya closer. Take care of my boy, she whispered. He pretends to be strong, but his heart is so tender. Priya swallowed hard. I will, she promised, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Good, Leela said, patting her hand. I knew from the moment I saw you, not acting at all. Priya froze. What do you mean? Leela's smile was knowing despite her weakness. Old women see what others miss. Whatever game you two thought you were playing, real love can't be pretended. Before Priya could respond, Leela had drifted off again. That evening, as sunset painted the room in amber hues, Rohan stepped into the hallway to take a call from his office. Priya sat holding Leela's hand, humming softly, when the old woman's eyes suddenly opened with surprising clarity. I'm going soon, she stated simply. Don't say that, Priya pleaded. It's all right, Beta. I've had my time. Leela's gaze was steady. But you and Rohan, your time is just beginning. Don't waste it on pride or fear. It's complicated, Priya whispered. Love always is, but I've watched you both these weeks. The way you look at each other when you think no one sees, that's not pretend. Tears filled Priya's eyes. I never meant for this to happen. The best things in life are rarely planned, Leela said, her voice growing fainter. Promise me you'll tell him. Before Priya could answer, Rohan returned. One look at her face and he was immediately at her side. What's wrong? Nothing, she said, wiping her eyes. Your grandmother is very wise. That night, Leela stabilized, somewhat enough that the doctor suggested they go home and rest. In the apartment, the air between them felt charged with unspoken words. Exhausted but unable to sleep, they found themselves in the kitchen, making tea neither would drink. 10 days left, Rohan said suddenly, breaking the silence. Priya looked up, her heart constricting. Is that all you can think about? The countdown? No, he admitted, his voice rough with fatigue and emotion. Lately I've been thinking about how to stop it. Their eyes met across the counter, and in that moment, all pretense fell away. What had begun as an act had somehow, without either of them noticing, become the most real thing in their lives. Rohan, Priya began, I think we need to talk about. But the phone rang again, and they both knew it was time to say goodbye. Beyond the agreement, Leela Malhotra passed away peacefully. At dawn, with Rohan holding one hand and Priya the other. In her final moments, she had opened her eyes, smiled at them both, and whispered, "Remember what matters." Then she was gone, leaving behind a silence that echoed with all the things unsaid. The days that followed blurred together. Priya moved through them like a shadow at Rohan's side, handling funeral arrangements, receiving mourners, making sure he ate and rested. Their pretense continued automatically, neither of them acknowledging that their agreement's purpose had ended with Leela's passing. After the funeral, relatives and friends gathered at Rohan's apartment. Priya overheard his uncle telling someone, "Thank God he found her. I can't imagine him facing this alone." Later, when the last guest had gone, Rohan stood at the window, silhouetted against the city lights. "You've been amazing," he said without turning. "Above and beyond our arrangement." Priya approached slowly. "That's what people do when they care." He finally looked at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Our month is up tomorrow." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Technically, their contract was complete. Leela had seen her grandson happily married before she died. The charade had served its purpose. "I know," Priya said softly. "I should pay you the rest of what we agreed," he continued, but made no move toward his wallet. "Is that what you think I want?" she asked. Rohan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what you want, Priya. I don't even know what I want anymore. This whole thing started as a solution to a problem, but now the thought of you leaving feels like the problem." Priya's heart stuttered. "Rohan, let me finish," he said, crossing the room to stand before her. "I've spent my entire adult life building walls. After my parents, after watching what their loss did to Dottie, I decided relationships weren't worth the risk. Work was safer. Buildings don't leave you." He took her hands in his. "Then you came along with your flowers and your laughter and your way of seeing through me, and suddenly those walls didn't seem so necessary anymore." Priya felt tears threatening. "Your grandmother knew," she confessed. "She told me what we had wasn't pretend, that real love can't be faked." "She told me the same thing," Rohan said with a sad smile. "She always could see right through me." Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against the windows in a gentle rhythm. The apartment that had once felt so sterile to Priya now felt like the only place she wanted to be. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Do I pack my things? Do we shake hands and part ways?" Rohan's expression grew serious. "That depends on whether you were just fulfilling our agreement or if somewhere along the way it became something else for you too." Priya took a deep breath. "I came here for the money," she admitted. "And because I felt sorry for you and your grandmother. I told myself it was just business, that I wouldn't get involved." She stepped closer, placing a hand against his cheek. "But watching you with Leela, seeing how much you loved her, how deeply you cared despite trying to hide it, I started to see the real Rohan, and that man I couldn't help falling for." Relief washed over his face, followed by something that looked remarkably like joy. "So stay," he said simply. "Not for a month, not for any contract. Just stay." "As what?" she asked. "Your roommate? Your girlfriend?" "As whatever we want to be," he said. "We started this whole thing backward, moved in together before we even knew each other. Maybe now we can discover what we could be without any pretense." Priya thought of the empty apartment above her shop, of the lonely evenings that had once been her normal. Then she thought of mornings with Rohan, of dinners and conversations, of the connection that had grown between them, unplanned and unexpected. "I'd like that," she said. Rohan pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. "I kept counting down the days," he confessed. But somewhere along the way, I started hoping they wouldn't end. They don't have to, Priya whispered against his shoulder. 3 months later, they stood in the newly expanded Blooming Hope Garden Center. What had once been Priya's small flower shop now extended into the adjacent storefront, with a community garden taking shape in the backlot. The renovation plans, drawn by Rohan himself, hung framed on the wall. Leela would have loved this, Priya said, arranging lilies in the front display. She would have claimed credit for all of it. Rohan replied with a laugh, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Priya leaned back against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Wasn't she right, though? If she hadn't made that final wish, we might never have found each other, he finished. Or it might have taken years instead of days. Priya turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. I came to be your bride for a month, she said, echoing words they both remembered from that first desperate proposition. But it seems I'm staying much longer. Forever? Rohan suggested, suddenly serious. From his pocket he produced a small velvet box. This time, for real? Priya's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a delicate ring with a pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. Pearls were Dottie's favorite, he explained. She left this for you. Somehow she knew. Through tears, Priya nodded. Yes, she whispered. This time, no pretending. No countdown. Just us. Outside, spring sunshine warmed the newly planted garden, where seeds were just beginning to sprout. What had begun as a desperate arrangement had transformed into something neither of them had been looking for, but both had needed. Proof that even the most carefully constructed walls are no match for love that comes unexpectedly, and that sometimes the most beautiful truths emerge from what begins as pretense. In the small office at the back of the shop, a photograph of Leela smiled down on them, her eyes twinkling as if to say, I told you so.